Today we're going to be making our 2024-2025 NHL season predictions. We're going to go division by division, and I'm going to show you from bottom to top who I think is going to rank where, who's making the playoffs, who's winning the divisions, and who's winning the conference and the President Trophy. First team we're going to start with is unfortunately the San Jose Sharks here in the Pacific. I'm going to put them in at 8. Now, they added Toffoli, which is going to be good. If Celebrini is playing, that'll be a good line mate. Even if Celebrini does come in and he's really, really good, this roster is just not the best offensively. And if we look at the defense, it's just very, very bad. Adding Wallman is solid, but it's not a good team. We'll show off the goaltending tandem with Vanacek and Blackwood. So I think it's pretty fair to say that 8th is not much of a hot take here. Another year of bad hockey for San Jose, and then pick up another prospect, and maybe you can start looking at improving after that. Coming in at 7th in the Pacific, I have the Calgary Flames. Now, they've lost a couple pieces here. Offensively, they have some good players. Kadri's still good. Obviously, Huberdeau has fallen off. Sharon Govich is a very good player, and then some good supporting pieces like Coleman, Kuzmenko, Mantha. But overall, they don't really have a superstar. They don't have the best depth. Going on to the defense, they have a really good top pair here in Uyghur and Anderson. It's just beyond that, it's not the best with Bean, Ball, Hanley, and Miramanov. Goaltending wise, they just lost Markstrom, which even if you're really a big supporter for Wolf, I don't know if you can say that he's going to be able to carry them even if he takes a step in the right direction. And then having Vladar as the backup is serviceable. It's not great. So that's why they're coming here at 7th in my Pacific ranking. Coming in here at 6th, we have the Anaheim Ducks. Big things to look for them is Cutter Gauthier. How good is he going to be? How big of a step forward is Leo Carlson going to take? They have some good players here like Terry, Vetrano, Strome is decent. Zegras, you're going to be looking for a bounce back. Some good supporting characters in Fabry, Matavich, and Killorn. Defensively, Anaheim's looking a bit weak here. They still got some good pieces like Fowler and Gudas. But besides that, they're looking for some young guys to come in and hopefully play a good role for them in Zellweger. And I'm just going to say Pavel. I'm not going to attempt the last name here. But some good young pieces. Question is, are they ready to perform at the NHL level? Goaltending wise, I don't hate their duo here in Gibson and Dostel. It's not the best. They definitely don't have like that #1 starter, but they have 2 serviceable goalies. So again, I don't think it's much of a hot take to say the Anaheim Ducks are going to come in at 6th in the Pacific. Coming in here at 5th in the Pacific, just missing the playoffs, we have the LA Kings. Now, this could be a little bit more of a hot take. They've lost Pierre-Luc Dubois, which I don't know if that's a big loss for them. Their team-wise, I don't hate their offense. They have some good players. Again, I feel like they're a bit lacking in terms of star power. Can Byfield get to be that superstar that he was drafted to be? Kopitar's only getting older. Fiala, Kempe, Deneau, good pieces. Same with Moore. Beyond that, their bottom 6 is solid. Defensively, it's not the best, but I think, again, like Doughty's getting a little bit older here. He's still really good. Anderson's solid. Gavrikov is solid. But beyond that, it's looking a bit weak. They could definitely use a top 4 defenseman. Goaltending wise, this is where I really don't like them and why I have them falling out of the playoffs here. Kemper and Riddick, not a fan of that goaltending tandem. Even if Riddick has a good season, I just don't think it's a good pair. If Kemper bounces back, that's probably what it's going to take for them to get in playoffs, but he hasn't played good in a little while now, so that's why I have LA coming in at the 5th spot in the Pacific, again, just outside the playoffs. Coming in at 4 in the Pacific, in a wild card spot, most likely, we have the Seattle Kraken. Now, offensively, I like the depth. I think Stevenson was a bit of an overpay, but I think he's going to make the team better now. Again, they kind of suffer from a problem that a few teams have, which is they don't have much of a superstar up front, but they have some really good players in McCann, Beniers, Eberle, again, Stevenson, Burakovsky, Schwartz. This kind of just goes on and on. Bjorkstrand, they have great depth. Defensively, they're also pretty solid. Bringing in Montour makes that defense look really, really deep. They could probably benefit from a better top 4 defenseman over Alexiak, But defensively, I do like them. And in net, that's a bit more of a question mark. Obviously, Joey Decord took a step up. Grubauer has still not played very well, so we're going to have to see what Decord can do for them. But I have them just sneaking into playoffs in a wildcard spot. Coming in at third, we have the Vegas Golden Knights in the playoff spot for the Pacific. Now, offensively, they have some great players like Eichel, Hurdle, Stone, Carlson, but there is a lot of question marks here in terms of Barbashev, Holtz, Olofsson. How much are you going to get out of them in your possible top 6, top 9? Going on to the defense, they're still pretty solid here with Hannafin, Pietrangelo, Theodore, McNabb, Haig, Whitecloud. Very, very deep in terms of defense. Goaltending wise, I don't like them as much as I did the year before. Losing Thompson and getting Samsonov, I think, is a downgrade. Hale will have to see what he can do for them, and Samsonov will have to see also what can he do for them as well. But that's why they're coming in at third in the Pacific. Coming in at second in the Pacific, I have my favorite team, the Vancouver Canucks. Offensively, I like some of the moves they did, bringing in DeBrusk. We'll have to see how he does. He's a bit of a streaky player. Bringing in guys like Sprong. Again, we'll have to see what type of role he can play for the Canucks. They have pretty much the same core that got them top in the Pacific the year before. I think they're going to do what they did the year before, which is pick up some players earlier on, maybe a defenseman, maybe a forward. I don't know. We'll see. But I think they're going to be finishing second. I do like this offense. I think they could use a piece. They could have used a guy like Gensel. Defensively, not too happy about the bottom four. Hughes and Hronek is a great top pair, but beyond that, Myers and Susie, this is where I have the biggest concern and think they're probably going to have to pick up a top 4 defenseman, if not 2. Going into the net, this is the big question mark for the Canucks. Can Thatcher Demko stay healthy, and can he play at 100%? If he can do that, they honestly might have a shot here at number 1 in the Pacific, but it's too big of a question mark these last few years. This is why I have them coming in at second. Seelofs, I think he got slightly overrated, but he did play good in the playoffs. I think he'll be a serviceable backup coming into the next year. So that's why I have the Vancouver Canucks here at the second playoff spot in the Pacific. Coming in at number 1 in the Pacific and also number 1 in the conference, we have the Edmonton Oilers. What can I say about this offensive core? I like the adds in Skinner and Arvidsson. We'll have to see what type of player they get out of Skinner. Arvidsson, I think, is a really good, solid top 9 forward. Bottom 6 is serviceable. I like bringing back Henrique, and we'll see how Holloway plays going into this year. What more can I say about Draisaitl, McDavid, and Hyman and Nuge? Obviously great players. Defensively, don't like them as much. Ekholm and Bouchard is solid. Nurse, I hate on him a lot, but he is a top 4 defenseman. We'll have to see what they can get out of Broberg. Not too concerned about the bottom pair because it's a bottom pair. Goaltending is definitely the big question on the Oilers. What type of Stuart Skinner are they going to get going to next year? I definitely like the Canucks better in net, especially if Demko can stay healthy. At the end of the day, Edmonton's thing has never been goaltending and defense, so they're probably going to finish first in the conference where I have them. Moving on to the Central Division, we have coming in at 8th in the division, we have the Chicago Blackhawks. Again, they've made a couple good adds here in Bertuzzi and Teravainen. Getting a healthy Hall is going to help. Bedard, I only expect him to keep getting better. We'll have to see what they can get out of Mikheyev. Besides that, offensively, they're still pretty weak. Defensively, this is where I have the most concern. If Vlasic and Korinski can take the next step, that'll be big for them. But even adding Brody and Martinez, it's still not a great defensive core. I don't think it's the worst defense, but I just don't think it's anywhere near the best. And their weakest spot is their goaltending. Mrazek and Brossoit, I would say that's 2 backup goalies. Brossoit is a very solid backup goalie. Maybe you could even argue that Mrazek's like a fringe starter, but just very, very weak in that, and that's why I have them 8th in the Central Division. Coming in at 7th in the Central Division, we have the St. Louis Blues. Now, guys like Shen regressed. Saad is only getting older. Same with Thomas and Kyrou. Neighbors had a really solid season. We'll see if he can improve upon that. But they just really don't have anything special in terms of the forwards. Defensively, this is where I really don't like them. Leddy, Parenko, Falk, and then some supporting cast here. Just not a very good defensive core. In net, I don't hate Binnington. I think Hofer is also a pretty solid goalie. I don't think goaltending is the problem. I think it's defense and just a bit of a lackluster offense, which is why I have them at 7th in the Central. Coming in at 6 in the Central Division, we have the Minnesota Wild. Now, I don't hate this team at all. They have some great guys like Kaprizov. The problem is Father Time might catch up to them with Zuccarello. Boldy's really solid, same with Erison Ek. Rossi, we'll have to see how he plays going into this year. They have good depth pieces like Hartman and Foligno. Again, I don't hate this team at all. I just think they get edged out by some of the other teams. Defensively, again, pretty solid with Brodin, Faber, and Spurgeon. Same with Middleton, also another solid defenseman. Goaltending-wise is a bit more of a question mark. Whether you want to get out Gustafsson. Fleury is pretty much an elderly man at this point, so a lot of question marks there. Maybe if Father Time doesn't catch up to them, they can still be a really solid team going to this year, but it's just a bit mid, like them defensively, and that's why they come in at 6 in the Central Division. Coming in here at 5th, bit more of a hot take here. We have the Winnipeg Jets just missing out on the playoffs. They have some great pieces here. Kyle Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, Ehlers. I'm kind of interested to see what they do with Perfetti. I don't understand why he's getting into trade rumors. Some other good depth pieces like Niederreiter, but just center-wise, they're looking very weak, losing out on Monahan. Definitely going to have to pick someone up there. Again, don't hate the forward core. It's just slightly a bit underwhelming. Defensively, they lost Dillon. This top 4 just kind of looks incomplete. Morrissey, Pionk, and DeMello is solid, but outside of that, it's looking a little bit weak. The big question, of course, is going to be Hellebuck. If Hellebuck decides to go crazy, he might be able to pull them into a playoff spot. If Hellebuck decides to have a bit of a down year, they're definitely going to be missing the playoffs. Hakanen's a backup goalie. We'll see what he can do there for Winnipeg, but that's why they're coming in at 5th in the Central Division for me. Coming in here at number 4, we have in the game the Utah Yetis, but obviously in the real NHL, we have the Utah Hockey Club. Now, honestly, this one's probably a bit more of a hot take, but I kind of like some of the moves they made. Keller is obviously a really solid player. I think you can add some points to Cooley and Genther, who had good rookie seasons, or I don't know if you consider it a rookie season, full rookie seasons. They have solid seasons, and I think a lot is going to depend on what they can do for this team. Outside of that, honestly, it's a bit underwhelming offensively. They have some good pieces here. We're going to have to see what they can do for them. This is where I really like them, though, defensively. Sergachev, Durzi, Marino, pretty solid. Cole, don't know if I want him in the top 4, but I think it's a pretty solid D. Obviously, a lot of question marks. It's a very new defense. We'll have to see how this defense can play together. In net, they have Engram and Vejmelka. Engram obviously had a pretty solid year. Vejmelka's a serviceable backup, if not a fringe starter. So I went with them over the Jets. I definitely think they could fight it out, but I thought it'd be fun to go with the Utah Hockey Club here at the 4th position, making it into the playoffs in a wildcard spot in the Central. Coming in at 3, we have the Colorado Avalanche. They're a very top-heavy team with some great players like McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar. I like Middlestat, Lehkonen, Drouin. I think they're great supporting cast. Same with Colton, but I think they're definitely missing out on Landeskog here. They could use another all-star caliber player. Would also some more good supporting cast. Defensively, Taves and Makar is great. Matson and Girard is definitely a serviceable second pair, and then DeHaan and Brandstrom will have to see what they can do for the bottom pair. Where I really don't like them is Georgiev as a starter. Some people really like him, some people not so much. I've never really been on the Georgiev train, so not much is going to change there after having a pretty mediocre year. Anuin, we'll have to see what he can do for them. I'm pretty sure he had a solid year. Correct me if I'm wrong, not too sure, but still in a playoff spot, but coming in at 3rd in the Central Division. Coming in here at 2nd in the division, obviously making some pretty crazy moves. Maybe a little bit of a hot take, but I really do like this team. Last year, I got to see what they could do against the Canucks, and I think they're only a better team since then. So adding guys like Stamkos and Marchessault, I think is going to be really good. In the future, it might hurt them, but right now I expect them to be still at next to near the top of their game. I like their top 6. Obviously, we saw what this Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist line could do. We'll have to see if Nyquist can have a good year like he did the year before, but I don't see why they can't, considering they're literally the same line. Bottom 6-wise, they're solid. It's passable. Losing out on Sherwood to the Canucks is a bit unfortunate for them. He's a pretty solid player, but I think they'll be okay. Defensively, don't like them as much. We'll have to see how good Shea can play. Yossi is obviously a big piece for them. Beyond that, Carrier is solid. Lazon has stepped up his game in Nashville a little bit, but it's not the best bottom 4. Shen and Stasny is a passable bottom line. Goaltending wise, they still got Saros. If Saros can have a bit of a bounce back here, then I think this is definitely going to be a good year for Nashville. Wedgwood is a solid backup goalie. That's why I have them second in the Central. Coming in at first in the Central Division, we have the Dallas Stars. What can I say about them? They're still a really solid team. I don't think they've had many changes here. Still got Robertson, Hintz, Sagan, Stankoven, Johnson obviously took a big step in the playoffs. Guys like Ben, Marchman, and Duchesne. Offensively, I think they're solid. Maybe they could use another piece. Defensively, also pretty solid here in Heiskanen, Harley, and Lindell. Don't really like Dumba here. I feel like that's one of their weaker spots. But again, bottom pair is serviceable. Goaltending wise, we'll have to see what type of year Ottinger can have for them. But I think they're a lock for the playoffs. Whether or not they win the division or the conference is still to be seen. And DeSmith is a serviceable backup. Heading over to the East, the Atlantic Division, we're going to start with here at 8. We unfortunately have the Canadiens. Now, I actually like the team. I like some of their pieces. Guys like Slavkovsky took a step forward. I like Suzuki. I like Caulfield. We'll have to see if guys like Doc and Newhook have a healthy, good year. Gallagher in your top 6 is a bit rough. I'm not a big fan of their bottom 6 either. Defensively, there's just a bit more of question marks. They don't really have a number 1 defenseman. Matheson is solid. Savard is solid. But beyond that, I'm pretty sure Gooley is a pretty solid defense. We'll have to see if he can continue to take steps forward. We're going to have to see what Lane Hudson can do in a full NHL season. But there's just too many question marks, a bit too mid for my taste. Montembeault is a okay starter goalie, and then Primo as the backup. But unfortunately, I still have them finishing at the bottom of the Atlantic in the 8th spot. Coming in here at 7th, we have the Detroit Red Wings, who I'm pretty sure technically missed the playoffs by 0 points, which is really funny, or technically, I guess you could say 1. I do like some of their players, obviously DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond. Bring back Kane is going to be huge for them. Bringing in guys like Tarasenko, Confer, solid. Offensively, I don't hate them. I think they could use a superstar. They've got a couple all-stars, but defensively, I really just do not like them with Sherratt and Petrie still being on the team. Sider's obviously really good. We'll have to see how good Evanson can play for them. Bottom pair, Eric Gustafsson and Mata is fine. Goaltending wise, this is also where I don't really like them in Talbot and Lyon. If Talbot can have a bounce back season, then that would be huge for them. But honestly, at 36 years old, I think what you saw last year in LA is what you're getting in Talbot. Lyon is a solid fringe goalie, backup goalie, but I just do not like Talbot, and that's why we have the Red Wings coming in at 7th in the Atlantic. Coming in here at 6th in the Atlantic, just missing out on a playoff spot, we have the Ottawa Senators. Now, I do like some of the moves they've done, but offensively, Tkachuk, Stützle, and Giroux is solid. Batherson, Norris, and Perron. Again, good, solid supporting cast here. It's not the deepest forward core, not the most top-heavy forward core. Defensively, Sanderson, I really like. Zub, Chabot. Outside of that, having Jensen as a top 4 defenseman is a bit questionable. Going into net, obviously the big upgrade here is getting Allmark. That'll be big for them. The question is, how good is Allmark going to play? If he can play really, really good, maybe they'll get just into like a wild card spot. I can't see them finishing any higher than that, though. I like the team. I want them to do good. I want them to make the playoffs, but I'm going to have to put them at 6th, just missing the playoffs. Next off here, bit of a hot take. We have the Sabres coming in at 5th in the Atlantic, and I actually have them in a wild card spot, the second wild card spot, that is. I like their team. I think it's time they make the playoffs. It's been so long since they made the playoffs. I think they're going to make that push, but there is a lot of question marks. It's going to depend on a lot of variables, so I'm pulling for them, but let's go over the team. So Peterka, obviously a solid top 6 forward. Thompson, they're going to need him to have a bounce back season. They need him to be a superstar. If he's not a superstar, this team is lacking a superstar. Tuck, Quinn, Cousins, all solid top 6 forwards. Going to be looking for Quinn and Cousins to continue to improve. Going to be looking for Benson, obviously, to improve. Guys like Zucker, McLeod, and Greenway, I think that makes a solid third line. Outside of that, defensively, again, there's just a lot of question marks with this team. How good will Byron be? I like this on paper. It's young. It's got so much potential. It's just a matter of will they reach that potential defensively. On NHL, having Clifton here in your top 4 looks a little bit rough, but maybe this isn't what they're going to run with. In net, they do have Luukkonen. Again, A lot of question marks here. How good is Luukkonen going to be? He had a really good second half of the season. If he can play like that, definitely going to be making the playoffs. If not, they might end up missing. And then Reimer, of course, is just a solid backup goalie. So that's why I have them at 5th in the Atlantic, getting the second wildcard spot. Coming in here at 4th in the first wildcard spot, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Obviously, big losses in Stamkos, picking up Gensel. Maybe can replace that production. I like Gensel, but I think in terms of losing your captain, that's a big loss. When you have Point, when you have Kucherov, again, adding Gensel, it's hard to go against them. Hagel, Sorelli, solid players. Atkinson in top 6, not a big fan. I like Paul, I like Sherry, but outside of that, it's looking like they're starting to lose some of that depth, which is expected when you win 2 cups, almost 3 in a row. Defensively, guys like Hedman obviously still solid, McDonough's solid, Cernak solid. Losing Sergachev is going to be big for them. We'll have to see how Darren Radish can play here in the top 4. Getting guys like Moser is really solid, and Perbix. Obviously in that you still have Vasilevsky and then Johansson as the backup. So still a playoff team, but I think they're a bit on the decline here unless they can turn things around. So again, first wildcard spot, making the playoffs, 4th in the Atlantic. Coming in at 3rd in the Atlantic, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs. When you have guys like Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, still have Tavares, Nyes. They're pretty solid up front. They got a lot of superstar power. Guys like Domi and Yarncroc making up a good supporting cast. Same with Nyes, you could add that to supporting cast. Don't know much about Bobby McMahon. Pretty sure he had a pretty solid season though. So bottom 6 wise, they're solid. They got good supporting cast like I've said. Defensively, this is where you have more of the question marks here. Riley again is a pretty good defenseman, but beyond that, like Tanev is only getting older. At this point, the guy's at like 1 HP in his life. He should still be solid. He's going to start declining at some point, you would think. Liljegren, we'll see what they can get out of him. Ekman Larson, are you getting the Vancouver Canucks Ekman Larson? Are you getting the Florida Panthers Ekman Larson? That's going to be the big question there. Pretty good bottom pair in Benoit and McCabe, though. Goaltending wise, I'm not very high on them. Joseph Woll hasn't had a good regular season yet, so we're going to have to see, can he have his first good regular season? And then Stolarz as a backup it's a solid 1A, 1B, but they don't have that real like number 1 goalie, which I feel like is a big loss for any team. So that's why I have them coming in at 3rd in the Atlantic Division. Coming in here at 2nd in the Atlantic, it's hard to bet against the Bruins as they always seem to do good no matter what. Pickups like Lindholm and Zadorov are going to be big for them, even if they are overpays in the long run. On paper, the team didn't look that great last year, and they don't look amazing this year, but I'm sure they're going to find a way. I'll be honest, I don't know how good Geeky and Coyle are at this point, but obviously they must be pretty good if this team keeps making the playoffs. Defensively, again, Zadorov, a little bit of an overpay, but he's going to be solid. We'll have to see if we're getting the playoff Zadorov or the regular season Zadorov. If they can get the playoff Zadorov, that's going to be huge for them. If they get regular season, then he's still a pretty solid defenseman. But Carlo, McAvoy, and Lindholm, all very solid defensemen. McAvoy obviously being a lot better, but bottom pair, Lorai and Peak is solid. Goaltending wise, obviously Swayman, very good goalie. Losing Allmark is going to suck for them, but I don't think it's going to be the difference between making and not making the playoffs. We'll have to see what kind of season Korpisalo can give for them, whether he'll be more like a fringe goalie or if he's just going to sit in that backup spot behind Swayman. But either way, I don't think their season is going to depend much on Korpisalo. But 2nd in the Atlantic Division is the Boston Bruins. Coming in here at 1st in the Atlantic, we have the Florida Panthers, obviously just won the cup. They're not looking that much different from the team that won the cup, having guys like Verhaeghe, Barkov, and Reinhart back. To Chuck, Bennett, Rodriguez, they have some great depth here with Lundell. Outside of that, Lusterine, I'm pretty sure, is pretty solid. Don't know much about these other guys here, I'll be honest. Losing out on Tarasenko kind of sucks. Expect them to probably just make another addition like they did the year before with Tarasenko. Defensively, Forsling and Ekblad is solid. Outside of that, it's looking a bit weak. Losing out on Montour and Ekman Larson is really big for them. Now, obviously, bringing in Ekman Larson was meant to be more like a depth move, I think, and they turn him into a really solid top 4 defenseman. So I think maybe the idea is trying to do that with Schmidt, who's been that guy in the past. We'll have to see what they can do with him. I think they're going to make the best out of their players. That's what makes them such a good team. If not, they'll make the acquisitions they need. Goaltending wise, Bobrovsky, I think he's a slightly I think he's slightly overrated, getting older now. We'll have to see what type of goalie he can be going into next year for them. If not, I think he's going to be solid at the very least. We'll have to see what Spencer Knight is for them as the backup goalie, whether or not he can play a full season without life problems creeping in. Moving on to the Metropolitan Division, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets, unfortunately coming in at 8th despite adding Monahan. This team is just really mid. Like, it would take a lot for them to make the playoffs. Gaudreau has fallen off. Monahan, I think, is a good add, but I don't think they'll get as much as Winnipeg and Montreal got out of him. Beyond that, you're going to be looking for guys like Fantilli and Johnson to take the next steps forward. Obviously, Fantilli had a pretty solid season. Beyond that, guys like Jenner is solid, but they're just kind of lacking here offensively. And then if you go on to the defensive core, like Provorov, Werenski, Severson is solid. Juracek will have to see how good he can be this year. Goodbranson and Johnson as a bottom pair is fine, I guess. It's a little bit scary of a pairing in my opinion. But the big question here in net with Merzlikins and Tarasov, they could use a different goalie. I think it's time to move on from Merzlikins, and it seems like he wants to be moved on from too, considering he keeps requesting trades. So not very high on this team going into this year, and I think that means a second year in a row finishing at the bottom of the division, unfortunately, for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Coming in here at 7th in the Metropolitan, we have the Washington Capitals. Not very high on them at all. Obviously, big pickups here in Dubois. We'll have to see what they can get out of him. I'm not high on him, never been high on him. Don't think it's great to pick up guys with attitude issues and problems like that. So we'll have to see. Who knows? Maybe they can get something out of him. Mangiapane is a pretty solid pickup, but it's not going to be a difference maker at all. I think Ovechkin is just going to continue to regress here. He didn't have a great year. I think, honestly, at this point, he might be hurting the team as he keeps searching for the goal lead. I don't like them depth-wise either. Milano's pretty solid. Same with guys like McMichael, and we'll see what they can get out of Lapierre. Beyond that, like Dowd obviously is pretty solid in their bottom 6. Defensively, they've made some good additions. Chicherin, Carlson. Well, not adding Carlson, but adding Chicherin is really big for them. We'll have to see what they can get out of him. Sandin, Roy, Carlson, Fervari. It's pretty good depth, nothing crazy though. And then goaltending wise, I like the addition of Thompson. I think he's going to be a lot better than having Kemper, and obviously having Charlie Lindgren. So this is one of the places where I do like them. We'll have to see what they can get out of these two goalies. I do think they're very solid fringe goalies. Can one of them emerge as the true starter is going to be the question here, but either way, I have them missing the playoffs here at the 7th position in the Metropolitan. Moving forward to number 6 in the Metro, we have the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, a lot of this just banks on the fact that Tortorella seems to get a lot out of the team. Last year, they weren't that good on paper, and he got a lot out of them. Obviously, they kind of choked their playoff spot. This year, I think they're better, which means I think Tortorella can maybe even get them into a playoff spot if he really fights, but I have them outside of it, obviously, in my ranking. Konechny, Couture, solid players. Forster, honestly don't know too much about him, so I'm not going to comment on him. Tippett, I know he had a pretty big season. We'll have to see what Frost can do for them. Michkov is obviously the big question here. If he can come in and be a really good player, that'll definitely benefit them. I don't know if he even comes in and is that player, if that pushes them into a playoff spot. Depth-wise, I actually do like them here with Brink and Lawton and Farabee. Fourth line's a fourth line. Defensively, guys like York and Sanheim, again, I'm not going to pretend like I know the most about them. I'm pretty sure they're pretty solid defensemen, though. Drysdale is okay. We'll see what he can become. I don't know what he's been for Philly, and guys like Sealer. So I'm not going to sit here and act like I know a lot about this team, because I don't. Goaltending-wise, it doesn't look that good on paper with Ursin and Fedotov, though. So that's why I have them finishing here at 6 in the Metro. Again, don't know the most about this team. Maybe they surprise us like they did last year, and maybe they can keep that playoff spot unlike they did the year before. Coming in here at 5th, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, they're going to be a solid team as long as they have Crosby and Malkin. Unfortunately, they just missed the playoffs, and I think they're going to do it again just outside the playoffs once again. Again, we said Crosby, Malkin, guys like Rust is solid, Raquel solid. Same with Bunting. Outside of that, they're looking a little bit weak defensively. Again, when you have Carlson, Letang, it's pretty good. Outside of that, Pedersen, Graves, Grizzlick. Not the best goaltending wise. Jari, I'm not too sure about him. He seems to have good seasons, bad seasons. We'll see what he is for them. Honestly, I don't know the most about the guy, but no matter what, I have them finishing here 5th in the Metro, just outside of a playoff spot. Once again, we have a team that's just missing the playoffs. We have the New York Islanders. I think it's time they missed. It's just kind of been the same story as the past years. It's just pretty mid. Duclair's a good ad, but nothing that pushes this team over the edge. They still got guys like Barzal, Horvat. Nelson's only getting older. We'll have to see how good he is going into next year. I don't mind some of the supporting cast like Palmieri, Pajot, and Lee, but it's nothing incredible like Engvall. Just not a big fan. Defensively, they're pretty solid though with Pelech and Polak. And then obviously Dobson and Romanov and Mayfield and Riley. It's solid. Obviously, that's been one of their strengths in the past years. Goaltending-wise, Varlamov and Sorokin, this is really what pushes them ahead. A really good goaltending tandem. We'll have to see if Sorokin can have a bounce-back year. If not, they still have Varlamov, obviously getting older. We'll have to see how good he is going into this next year. Either way, have them just missing out on playoffs, 4th in the Metro. Coming in here at 3rd in the Metro, we have the Carolina Hurricanes. Obviously, some big losses as they lost out on Gensel. Center-wise, beyond Aho, it just looks a bit weak with Kotkaniemi and Stahl. They just look like they're missing a piece, if not two. I like guys like Nikas and Jarvis, obviously Aho and Svechnikov, but just outside of that, it's looking pretty weak. Defensively, more of a strong suit here, having Slavin and Burns and Orlov and Walker. Walker obviously being a big ad. I'm not going to act like, again, I know the most about him from what I've heard. He's a pretty solid defenseman, so I think that's good for them. And then having Gostisbehere and Chatfield as your bottom pair, I think is really good. So that's kind of what pushes them into the playoffs. Goaltending wise, not as high on them. Obviously, we'll have to see if Anderson is still a good goalie going into the next year. Only getting older, dealt with tons of injury problems. We'll see if Kochetkov can be a #1 goalie going into next year as well. So that's kind of more where I have the question marks with this team, but I have no doubt they're going to be making the playoffs. We have them 3rd here in the Metro. If not, I think they'll get a wild card spot. But again, I think they've gotten a bit worse. Coming in here at 2nd in the Metro, we have the New Jersey Devils. Obviously, just missed out on the playoffs. I was high on them going into last year, and I'm high on them going into this year. I like the moves they've made. Obviously, having guys like Heischer, Bratt, and Hughes is just insane depth. We'll have to see if Meyer can have a bounce-back season. Same with Palat. Guys like Mercer, I like Nosen, Hala, Tatar. So good, like pretty decent depth, nothing crazy. Defensively, though, Siegenthaler, Hamilton, Pesce, Hughes, Dillon, and Nemec is a pretty solid defensive core. A bit of a question mark here with Nemec and Hughes. How good will they be going into this next year? Pesce is a very big pickup for them, and also Dillon as well. Goaltending wise, this is where I really like them. I'm a big fan of Markstrom. Sure, he has his moments where he makes questionable decisions, but I think it's without a doubt an upgrade. We'll have to see just how good he is, but that's why I have the New Jersey Devils coming in here at 2nd in the Metro. And then Allen is also a very solid backup goalie. So finally, to wrap up our rankings here, thank goodness it has taken so long. I'm exhausted. We have the New York Rangers. I have them finishing 1st in the Metro, and I have them repeating as not only the conference champions, but the President's Trophy winners as well. Just a really good team. Guys like Kreider, Zibanejad. Not a big fan of Smith being up here. We'll have to see how good Lafreniere is in the next year. Obviously, he had a better year this year. We'll have to see if he continues that trend. Guys like Trocheck and Panarin, very solid. We'll see if Trocheck can repeat the year he just had. Cheadle, again, kind of the same story. We'll have to see how good he is. Obviously, had a good year last year. Capo was a bit of a question mark. Same with Cool. Well, I don't know much about Cooley, I'll be honest. Fourth line. They got Matthew Rempe. I know a lot of people like him. Defensively, Lindgren, Miller, Trouba, and Fox. That is a pretty solid top 4. Guys like Schneider and Jones in your bottom pair. Don't know much about Jones. I know Schneider is pretty solid, but the big piece here, goaltender Shesterkin. And we'll have to see if Quick can have the season he did the year before. Honestly, wouldn't bet on it, but he was really big for them. If not, though, they have Shesterkin, so that's the big piece for them. I definitely think throughout all these rankings, there's going to be movements. I'm not going to predict it 100% correct. So much depends on injuries. Can people bounce back? Can people have the same season they had the year before or a better season? So these have been my rankings. All we have left to do is put these into the NHL sim and see how EA thinks these teams are going to sim. So let's go and do that. So we're here in seasons mode. Trades are off. We have the Canucks selected as the team we're going to spectate as, but again, it doesn't matter. We're not going to be editing lines. We're not going to be doing any of that jazz. We're just simming to see who wins the regular season, and then obviously we can go in the playoffs and see who wins that as well. And if our rankings come true in the EA sim. We'll open up the calendar here, we'll start simming, and when we get to the end of the season, I'll let you guys know. Okay, so we've reached the end of this season here. I'm going to go into the standings here, and then we can look at that. Maybe compare it to our rankings. So in the Pacific, we actually have Vancouver winning the division. I would absolutely, as a Vancouver Canucks fan, love if that happened. We have Vegas and LA in the second and third spot. So EA has this a lot different than we do, as the Kraken somehow managed to finish under San Jose. Somehow the Oilers ended up missing the playoffs and having Calgary and Anaheim finish above them. So this sim is already looking pretty whack here. We'll go into the Central, see if that's any better. So Colorado, Dallas, and Winnipeg. Same with Washington, or not Washington, oh my gosh, the Predators and St. Louis. They have the Yeti finishing at the bottom, or the Hockey Club, whatever you want to call them. This is a pretty whack sim, I gotta be honest. We'll look at the East, though. Let's look at the... what is it? The Atlantic first, or did I do Atlantic? Yeah, Atlantic first. Toronto wins the Atlantic in the sim. Tampa second, Ottawa third, Buffalo fourth. So that's pretty similar, except for the fact that we have Florida missing the playoffs here. Don't know about that one. Even with a 91 overall Bobrovsky, it was not good enough. We'll take a look at the Metro here. We have the Rangers, the Capitals, and the Flyers making it in. So New Jersey misses again. Pittsburgh misses. Same with the Islanders and the Jackets. So we'll take a look at the entire league here, as the only thing I did get right, at least in the sim here, is New York Rangers do repeat as the President's Trophy winners. Outside of that, pretty interesting sim here. I'm not going to bet on the Florida Panthers missing the playoffs. Don't think that would be smart to do. Or Edmonton Oilers finishing 24th in the league. Same with Boston missing here. Don't think I would bet on that. Or or Seattle finishing here at 30th, with San Jose coming at 28th. So bit of a wacky sim here. We'll take a look at the player stats. So in the entire league, our points, our Art Ross winner, we have McKinnon here. In terms of goals, Richard winner, we have Matthews yet again. Beyond that, we'll take a look at the defense. Makar wins the Norris most likely, if not Fox. We'll look at rookie skaters here. Obviously, since I'm doing this in seasons, Bedard is still listed as a rookie. But if we're looking past that, we have Matvei Michkov winning the Calder. Going on to the goaltending here, we'll check that out to see who are our top goalies in the league. So we'll sort by save percentage. So Kochetkov had a really good season. In terms of starters, though, we'll look at Joseph Woll having a big season. So I said I didn't think he would be big in real life. And same with Georgiev. So the sim just hates my opinion here and puts two goalies that I'm not high on up in the top of the NHL. Beyond that, I think that's it in terms of stats to look at here. We could take a look at the awards real quick here. So actually, before we look at the awards, let's sim the rest of the playoffs. I'll show you guys the awards here, as we have the Vegas Golden Knights winning their second cup in 3 years. I don't think anybody would want that to happen. I'm definitely not betting on it. As we said before, New York Rangers win the President's Trophy yet again. So the finals ended up being Vegas versus Toronto. Actually, I'm sure Toronto fans would love that. That's how we know the sim is unrealistic. Again, Art Ross goes to McKinnon, Hart to McKinnon, Norris goes to Fox, Bing goes to Kaprizov, Calder actually would go to Michkov, as Bedard wouldn't be eligible. Smythe goes to Eichel, Vezina goes to Georgiev, Anderson wins the Jennings, Masterson goes to Sherratt, Selke goes to Matthews of all people, Lindsay goes to McKinnon, and Richard goes to Toronto. So Last thing we have to do here in this very long video, or at least the recording is very long, is look at the playoff tree. So there you have it. Vegas Golden Knights beat the Toronto Maple Leafs in 6 to win the Stanley Cup. Beyond that, got anything interesting here? New York ends up losing to Toronto in 7, so that'd be a great Eastern Conference final. Western side, Vegas beat Winnipeg in 5. Wouldn't bet on Winnipeg getting to the Western Conference in real life. Beyond that, can take a long look, and that's the playoffs. So that's been the sim. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a lot of effort to make, so if you did enjoy, please give it a like, subscribe. Let me know down in the comments if you agree with my rankings or EA rankings. Let me know what your rankings are. And besides that, guys, take care of yourselves.